Ladies and gentlemen, you tuned in to Retardistan to see what retarded nonsense the government's doing today. And to be honest, well, it's more of the same, but obviously an escalation of everything else. Because in the latest news, and I've got to be honest and say I haven't actually read anything in the legacy media about this, but the new ambassador from the United States to South Africa, Bosel III, he actually had a press conference today, or a conference where he talked about South Africa. And obviously I've seen the highlights. Now, one of the comments that he made is that the US is running out of patience with the ANC on 5 key policy issues, specifically EWC, BE, hate speech, farm murders as a priority crime, and the non-alignment as foreign policy. And according to Bosel, South Africa is a top 10 priority country for Donald Trump. Now, obviously, Donald Trump's attention at the moment is all in Iran. But what that does show you, and I have said in the last few days, is that once he's finished with Iran, it's likely that his attention will turn to the next priorities. That could include South Africa. Now, before I carry on with the video, can I yet again remind you, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. So let's turn our attention then to Iran, because as you know, the supreme leader died and then his son took over. Now, his son is 56 years old, and he is considered by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard as a hardline cleric with strong ties to the IRGC. Now, he's never held public office ever and is known for operating behind the scenes. Now, critics say that his religious credentials are contested. In other words, he's not really a big Islamic scholar. So this idea of having this new democratic system outside of the system of the Shahs, as I said in my video yesterday, is all just, well, a load of hogwash, because effectively what they've done is create a new Shah system, this time with the Ayatollah's family. Now, as you know, his leadership transition has occurred during the ongoing war with the United States and Israel, and it must be stressed. It's not actually been seen, and some of the latest news are that he is injured, possibly already dead, but he's been elected anyway. Now, in terms of the war, it continues to escalate with missiles and drone strikes across the region. So far, Iran has attacked Israel, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Qatar, the UAE, and other regional locations. Now, the latest one is Turkey. And Turkey itself has now had to adopt forms of interceptors to stop Iranian missiles getting into its territory. It's important to understand that Turkey is a NATO member, so a strike against Turkey technically means that the NATO alliance is triggered. But I would stress that so far, Turkey's been fired on twice, and the NATO alliance has not been triggered, which has led to some individuals saying NATO's a load of hogwash. In any case, Israel and the United States continue to target Iranian military, missile, and internal security sites. Iran's UN ambassador claims that 1,332 civilians have been killed and thousands wounded so far by the strikes. Now, the Pentagon has confirmed that at least 7 US soldiers have died from injuries sustained during the operation. So, although I must stress, some of the injuries that have been sustained are like a guy fell over in the barracks in the middle of Bahrain and he had a heart attack because, I don't know, he didn't eat his prenutro in the morning. But somehow, like COVID deaths, right, it's like being attributed to the conflict. Anyway, that's what they say. Now, some analysts are saying that Iran is pursuing a war of endurance strategy. And this is in contrast to Donald Trump, who says, yeah, the war's pretty much over, even though it's not. Now, the goal, according to the Iranians, is to outclass US and Israel political will. It's important to understand political will, not military power. And that is because Iran recognizes that the West's political will is pretty much non-existent. It's a bunch of modern-age metrosexuals that have a real courage complex. In any case, Iran doesn't believe that they will get rapid military victory. They do believe that the political will, because of the Democrats and all of the left-wing nutjobs, that the pushback from these groups will be enough to change policy in these Western nations, which may bring an end to the war. Now, Iran continues to fire missiles and threaten regional energy infrastructure. Now, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard is described as firmly in control of strategy and decision-making. So that basically means that in Iran, Despite Donald Trump having wiped out a significant amount of the military apparatus in the country, no one is really taking over so far, and it does seem like the Revolutionary Guard is still pretty much firmly in control, despite all of the missile attacks. Now, some analysts believe that Iran may have sufficient military stockpiles to continue attacks for weeks. But it's important to understand that underneath international law, one of the type of missiles that many countries are prohibited from using are cluster bombs, because cluster bombs create wide, devastating effects over a large region. It's also important to understand that 50% of the missiles fired by Iran are, cluster bombs, which are illegal according to international law. Now, you wouldn't know that because, no one talks about it. Because who cares what international laws these guys are breaking? Them Western people, they're evil. Now, despite the strikes on Tehran, reports say that daily life continues and the conflict may have increased national solidarity. So that pretty much means that it's not galvanizing the individuals who don't want the regime. Some individuals are saying actually quite the reverse is occurring. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. Some analysts do have a habit of talking complete hogwash. Now, Iran's Revolutionary Guards warned that they could block Middle East oil exports if the attacks continue. Now, the Revolutionary Guard said that it would not allow 1 liter of oil to leave the region during the conflict. And they suggested that they would close their seas, which allows roughly 20% of global oil supply to pass through. And because they've done that, apparently oil supply has been heavily disrupted. And that's why we've had this huge increase in the price of oil. Now, tankers have been delayed. It's important to understand delayed. And storage facilities have begun filling as exports slow. Now, we actually saw this underneath Donald Trump's first reign, where the cost of petrol goes so low that the amount of barrels just exceeded the storage, and they almost wanted to give them away because they couldn't turn the extractors off. You couldn't just stop getting oil because that's not how they work. But you had nowhere to put these oils because no one was buying them, or at least you just couldn't get them out. Now, at the height of the panic so far, what we've seen is that the oil price per barrel has got to around $120 a barrel, but as of today, the price has kind of gone down to around $90 to $92 per barrel. Now, that rising oil prices are triggering fears of global inflation and slower economic growth. And for a country like South Africa, where the economic growth is like 1%, that's devastating. Investors initially moved into safe haven assets such as the dollar, and we saw that in terms of the currency exchanges, where even in South Africa, the rand fell sharply to the dollar because everybody was going into the dollar. Now, stock markets are, however, now falling due to the escalating phase of the conflict, with many individuals withdrawing from the stock market, causing massive stock shocks, if you want to call them that, because people are worried that the war will continue on for a longer period. Now, Donald Trump suggested that the war could be over very soon, and as a result, markets did rebound, and global equities rose and market volatility eased following these remarks. But I want to go back to what I said. According to the Iranians, they're in for the long haul. Donald Trump says won't happen, so let's wait and see. Now, Donald Trump said that the war was very complete and may end soon, because according to him, Iran has very little military capabilities remaining. But it's important to understand that whilst he says that, the missiles are still flying, like they are flying immensely all over Israel all day long. It is important to understand that Iran is not targeting military infrastructure, they are targeting civilians. They want civilian deaths because they think the more civilians that die, the less there will be for a political will for the war to continue. Now, Donald Trump has also suggested that any future Iranian supreme leader would need US approval or would not last long. And this was Donald Trump's prelude to the suggestion that the Ayatollah's son had been elected as the new Ayatollah. Now, Iran rejected the statement, saying that their leadership decisions belong to the Iranian Assembly of Experts, not to the public, I might add, because remember, no democracy in Iran. But the power rests with the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. Now, Iran warned that Iranians living abroad could face property confiscation if they support Israel or the United States. And this comes after social media has shown the Iranian diaspora celebrating the death of the Ayatollah. And I myself have shown you many of those clips. Now, there's millions of Iranians living abroad, mainly in North America and Western Europe. And Iran says, well, this is horrendous that they're celebrating the death of the Ayatollah. And how dare they? And they're going to expropriate their property if they have any in Iran if they're caught doing so. This comes after some pro-Iranian individuals were in Manchester and were caught riding on horseback going around chasing Iranians who were celebrating the death of the Ayatollah. What did the police do about it? Well, nothing, and there have been better YouTubers than me that have made videos around this. But it does show you just how embedded the Iranian Revolutionary Guard is in Western countries. Now, in terms of South Africa faces potential fuel shortages and possible rationing due to the global oil disruptions. It's important to understand rationing. I don't know if we'll actually ration fuel, but we'll see. Now, part of the reason for this is actually because South Africa now relies heavily on imported refined fuel after many of our domestic refineries shut down. It's important to understand we used to have a lot of domestic refineries, and they all closed down due to mismanagement or climate goals. Now, as a result of that, when South Africa needs its oil, its refined oil, we don't have it because we rely on all the imports. It's amazing how when you give away your strategic infrastructure at the times that you need it, you don't have it, and it causes massive economic shocks. If only our government had a brain cell and wasn't retarded and had actually thought about these things. Now, fuel imports operate largely on a just-in-time supply model, which means that what actually typically tends to happen is we only get our fuel imports as we need it. We don't actually stockpile at the moment. And this is where we are going to be vulnerable because any form of shipping disruption means we're not going to have the fuel. Now, industry experts are warning that importers may hesitate to bring in cargo if price controls prevent immediate cost recovery. In other words, what we're going to have to do preemptively is actually increase the cost of petrol in the country even before we get the new fuel in, so that it's priced in, so that when people actually get the fuel supply here, it's already priced into the model. I mean, this is kind of like completely batshit bonkers. Now, as we spend so much time talking about the Iranian war, it's important to understand that the South African Parliament has now said that they will debate the US-Israel attacks on Iran. Now, this debate was requested by the BOSA leader, Muhsin Mayamani. Now, these lawmakers, these parliamentarians, will discuss the conflict's implications for South African citizens, air travel disruption, and foreign policy. As a key point of foreign policy, that will be very interesting to see how South Africa responds, because you and I both know we're just going to have the normal commie retards just going, yay, Iran, and just peeing off everybody else in the Western world. Now, this debate also follows reports that there are South Africans stranded in Middle Eastern airports. It's important to understand that Middle Eastern airports basically means Dubai. And this has largely been due to airspace closures. Now, we all know about the legal risks of MTN and Iran because I've already covered that in numerous videos. But the latest news on that is that the telecommunications company MTN faces legal risks due to its links to its former operations in Iran. Now, this is specifically because the US is now targeting Iran. Now, there is an existing lawsuit under the US Anti-Terrorism Act, which could expose the company, that's MTN, to damages of around $5 billion. That's around 80 billion rand. Now, legal experts are warning that the worst case could involve a US death penalty, meaning that MTN could be cut off from the US dollar financial system. So if you pay your accounts with MTN through your Visa card or your MasterCard, well, not so fast. Because if the death penalty is applied, you won't be able to anymore. They'll effectively be blacklisted from SWIFT. Now, the issue relates to long-running allegations connected to Project Snooker in Iran's telecommunication licensing. MTN has denied the allegations and disputes the claim, so we'll see what happens. Now, in the final news article, it's important to understand that you're all in South Africa listening to the news and thinking, this is all super retarded. But there is some good news at the end of the tunnel, and that is, South Africa may be the safest country in the world to live in should there be World War III, according to some analysts. These analysts claim that South Africa could be amongst the safest countries in a global war. Now, the reason for that is because modern warfare is likely to involve cyber attacks, economic disruptions, and supply chain shocks. South Africa's distance from major military threats may reduce direct invasion risk, and the country itself is outside of any atomic blast zone. But it's important to understand that the country would still face economic shocks, energy disruptions, trade impacts, and information warfare. Now, experts say that the resilience in South Africa will depend on energy security, food security, governance, and internal stability, not on geographical isolation. So, if South Africa wants to survive a potential war, make sure you're off-grid, have your own ability to generate your own food, and effectively self-govern. Pretty much what we've been saying on Morning Show for like the last 5 years. In any case, that's the news of the day. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Until next time, bye.